the Stoic dichotomy of control. At the heart of Stoic teaching is this deceptively simple yet profoundly practical principle. Life's challenges fall into two domains, the internal and the external. Our judgments, our choices, the intentions we harbor, these lie firmly within our sphere of influence. The myriad events that swirl around us, weather, other people's opinions, the rise and fall of markets, remain stubbornly beyond it. Recognizing this boundary is less an exercise in detachment than a roadmap to focused action. When we train ourselves to ask first whether a given situation is subject to our will, we learn to direct our efforts where they can truly bear fruit, and to conserve our energy when it cannot. Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become one of antiquity's most respected thinkers, distilled this lesson into a daily practice. He urged students to pause whenever they felt frustration or fear, to interrogate the impulse with two questions. Is this within my power? And if so, how will I act? In his discourses, he reminded us repeatedly that men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. Here was the revelation. Suffering springs not from storms in the world, but from our judgments about them. By holding our judgments up to scrutiny, we see that some are rooted in reality, and some in fearful imagination. With this clarity, we can choose which to entertain and which to set aside. Seneca, writing letters to a friend named Lucilius from his villa overlooking the sea, expanded on this inward excavation. He described emotional turmoil as a tangle of beliefs, each branch representing a fear or desire. To overcome fear of poverty, he advised, trace that anxiety back through layers. I fear being shamed. I fear losing respect. I fear helplessness. Until you reach the foundational belief you can test and reshape. In this way, the Stoic workshop becomes a practical laboratory. Ideas are the raw materials, and reason is the artisan's tool. Through repeated use of this method, one's mind learns to treat anxieties as puzzles to solve, rather than threats to endure. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, carried this discipline into the highest seat of power. He recorded his reflections in what we now call the Meditations, not as grand proclamations meant for posterity, but as private reminders to himself. Observing the world's ceaseless change, he noted, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." In the palace, amidst burdens of state, he practiced turning his attention inward, examining each sensation and impulse, so that even as empires clashed beyond his walls, his own mind could remain a place of calm deliberation. He became a living testament to the dichotomy, shaping his own responses while allowing external events to unfold on their own course. To see this principle in action, imagine the daily ritual of a morning commute. A gridlocked highway, horns blaring, brake lights glowing red under a gray sky. Frustration builds like steam in a kettle. In one version of this story, the driver clenches the wheel, mutters curses, and allows the delay to cast a shadow over the entire day. In the Stoic version, the driver feels the initial flare of irritation, but then pauses, recognizes that the traffic itself is beyond control, and turns inward to what remains sovereign, one's own attitude. Perhaps a favorite podcast fills the silence, or the mind catalogs simple observations, the pattern of rain on the windshield, the shifting color of pavement. By redirecting attention from the immutable jam to one's own responses, the commuter transforms idle minutes into a space for calm reflection. This same lens applies when receiving criticism. Imagine presenting a project to colleagues and hearing feedback that stings, comments about unclear data or shaky logic. The instinct may be to bristle, to dismiss the critique as unfair. But the Stoic practitioner, after the initial rush of emotion, asks, is there truth in this? Is improving my work within my power? If yes, one's attention turns to refining the argument or clarifying the figures. If the critique stems from bias or misunderstanding, elements outside immediate control, then it is noted but not internalized. In this way, the individual retains mastery over their own effort and emotional equilibrium, regardless of external judgment. Even in fields of high volatility such as investing, the dichotomy serves as a stabilizing compass. Markets rise and fall on rumors, collective moods, and unpredictable world events, all beyond any single investor's command. Yet what is within one's power is the rigor of research, the discipline of diversification, and the clarity of risk parameters. By anchoring one's perspective in these controllable factors and accepting short-term swings as neutral background noise, the investor stays poised, making decisions from a position of calm analysis rather than reactive panic. Practically, cultivating this mindset begins with simple, consistent habits. A nightly reflection might involve jotting down moments of agitation and classifying each according to whether it lay within one's control. This exercise illuminates patterns, revealing where mental energy is being squandered on uncontrollable variables. A brief morning reminder, I shape my judgments, I accept what I cannot change, sets the tone for the day. In every challenging moment, a pause for 3 measured breaths can reorient the mind back to its own domain, reinforcing the boundary between inner agency and outer happenstance. Over time, these practices wire the mind to default toward focused action and serenity. The dichotomy of control becomes less a conscious framework and more a steady undercurrent, shaping how one plans, reacts, and even dreams. The power it grants is neither boastful nor domineering. It is quiet mastery. The sovereignty of an inner workshop where thoughts are molded with care, and external winds are felt but do not unsettle the forge of reason. In this way, the Stoic dichotomy of control reveals itself not as an austere doctrine, but as an invitation to live with purpose, clarity, and unwavering calm, no matter what the world beyond may bring. 2. Embracing the growth mindset. True capability is not fixed at birth, nor sealed by past outcomes. Rather, it unfolds continuously, through effort, reflection, and the willingness to learn. At the core of the growth mindset lies the conviction that our intelligence, talents, and abilities are not static endowments, but dynamic potentials. This idea stands in stark contrast to a belief system that measures worth by innate gifts or early achievements, and it reshapes each challenge into an invitation for expansion. To adopt this mindset is to recognize that setbacks, far from indicting our limits, illuminate paths for development, and that every stumble contains the seed of renewed strength. The psychologist Carol Dweck first articulated this distinction in her landmark research on children's responses to failure. In controlled studies, she offered praise for performance. "You must be very smart," to one group, and praise for effort. "I can see you worked really hard," to another. When confronted with difficult puzzles, those who had been lauded for effort embraced the challenge eagerly. Those praised for innate ability recoiled, fearing the risk of exposing their supposed deficiencies. Dweck's findings revealed a profound truth. How we describe our capacities to ourselves shapes our willingness to learn. When success is attributed to effort, obstacles become necessary trials on the path to mastery, rather than indicators of permanent limitation. Consider the metaphor of a mountain range. A fixed mindset climber views each peak as an insurmountable monument, immutable and daunting. Each slip on the rocky slope confirms their belief that some heights lie forever beyond their reach. In contrast, the growth mindset adventurer sees the same terrain as a series of training grounds. One day's ascent may end in retreat, but the experience teaches which footholds to trust, which gear to adjust, which route to reconsider. Each near summit becomes a lesson in technique and persistence. Over time, the climber's confidence grows, not because the mountains have become smaller, but because their own capacity to navigate them has expanded. In everyday life, this principle plays out in countless subtle ways. A novice pianist confronted with a complex passage may feel discouraged by repeated errors, interpreting each missed note as evidence of a limited gift. Yet, if instead she frames those notes as data, signals pointing to wrist tension or finger placement, she can iteratively refine her technique. The same applies to public speaking, coding, athletic training, or parenting. Initial awkwardness is not a verdict, but a chapter in a process. By viewing talent as malleable, we liberate ourselves from the tyranny of early setbacks and invite continuous improvement. Historical figures exemplify growth mindset in action. Thomas Edison famously tested thousands of materials before finding the right filament for the light bulb. His reflection, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work," captures the core attitude, persistence, experimentation, and learning from each attempt. In the scientific realm, Marie Curie's painstaking extraction of radium from tons of pitchblende illustrates a gradual mastery born of dogged effort, not instantaneous genius. And on more recent stages, Michael Jordan's storied cuts from his high school basketball team became the crucible in which he forged relentless dedication to practice, launching him into legendary status. These examples share a thread, a relentless belief in the capacity to grow, even when circumstances seem to conspire against success. The growth mindset also reshapes how we respond to criticism. Under its influence, feedback is neither a judgment of character nor a threat to self-worth, but a map highlighting areas for refinement. A software engineer receiving a code review peppered with suggestions can choose to feel defensive or to view each note as an opportunity to elevate craft. A writer, hearing that a draft lacks narrative flow, can resist, or can dissect the comment into actionable steps, reordering scenes, clarifying character arcs, tightening prose. In both cases, the shift from identity threat to an invitation for learning transforms anxiety into productive inquiry. In practical terms, nurturing a growth mindset begins with self-talk. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm just not good at this," pause and replace it with, "I'm not good at this yet." The addition of that single word, "yet," recognizes current limitation while affirming future possibility. Next, break large goals into micro-objectives. Instead of aiming vaguely to get better at public speaking, commit to speaking for 2 minutes at each team meeting. Each small success strengthens confidence and reinforces the neural pathways of learning. Keep a log of these micro-victories. As the list grows, it becomes tangible evidence of progress, countering any lingering doubts about whether improvement is real or illusory. It is equally important to cultivate a community that embodies growth principles. In a workplace, leaders who share their own development arcs, admitting where they once struggled, signal that vulnerability and effort are valued over flawless performance. Study groups, writing workshops, and training cohorts can reinforce collective momentum. Witnessing peers wrestle with similar problems and ultimately prevail expands our imagined capacity for success. This communal dimension echoes Dweck's later findings. Environments that emphasize learning, resilience, and curiosity accelerate the adoption of growth mindsets in everyone involved. Moreover, research indicates that teaching the neuroscience behind learning amplifies these effects. When students learn that their brains form new connections with each practice session, they report greater motivation and persistence. In one study, 7th grade math students who received a brief module on brain plasticity outperformed their peers on challenging problems weeks later, simply because they understood that effort physically rewires their minds. This blending of scientific insight and mindful reframing turns every struggle into a physiological and psychological process of strengthening. Yet embracing the growth mindset also requires an honest reckoning with fear, acknowledging that learning involves vulnerability. The risk of failure, the discomfort of the unfamiliar, is essential. The metaphor of the seed breaking through concrete illustrates this tension vividly. To emerge into the light, the seed must expend energy against resisting forces. In that resistance lies the nourishment of future bloom. Recognizing the necessity of this struggle prevents us from recoiling at the first sign of difficulty. Rather than seeking the illusion of effortless aptitude, we learn to trust the creative tension that drives growth. Finally, integrate periodic reflection into your routine. Each month, review areas where you encountered significant hurdles. Ask yourself, what did I learn? Which strategies proved effective? What new questions have emerged? By treating each obstacle as a research project, you reinforce the growth mindset cycle. Encounter, experiment, learn, iterate. Over time, this disciplined pattern transforms struggles from sources of shame into milestones of mastery. Embracing the growth mindset thus unfolds as a practice of intentional reframing, strategic effort, and ongoing inquiry. It invites us to see limitations not as wall-like barriers, but as portals to deeper capability. In so doing, it reshapes our relationship with challenge, giving us the freedom to engage boldly with complex tasks and the resilience to persist when outcomes remain uncertain. By cultivating this perspective, we embark on a continuous journey of self-transformation, one purposeful step at a time. The Kaizen principle of continuous improvement. True transformation seldom arrives in a single, sweeping gesture. Rather, it emerges through the persistent accretion of small, intelligent adjustments. At the core of the Kaizen philosophy lies the belief that every process, every routine, and every personal habit can be refined through incremental change. Originating in post-World War II Japan, Kaizen, literally good change, became the guiding principle behind Toyota's remarkable revival. Rather than relying on grand overhauls, Toyota encouraged every worker, from assembly line technicians to senior managers, to suggest and implement tiny process improvements. Over decades, these modest ideas compounded, elevating both quality and productivity to world-leading standards. Kaizen's genius resides in its insistence that perfection is not a distant summit to storm in a single campaign, but a horizon continually approached by each deliberate step. In principle, Kaizen unfolds as a simple cycle. Observe a process, identify an inefficiency, propose a slight modification, test it, and measure its impact. If the tweak yields benefit, however small, it becomes the new standard. Then the cycle begins again. This relentless focus on marginal gains transforms the workplace into a living laboratory of refinement. But the same logic applies equally to individual growth. When applied to personal goals, Kaizen encourages us to break grand ambitions into daily microtasks. A writer seeking to finish a novel might carve out a single sentence each morning. A runner training for a marathon may add just one extra minute to their jog. Someone learning a new language could vow to memorize 2 new words each day. Over weeks and months, these seemingly trivial increments aggregate into truly transformative results. Consider the metaphor of a river carving a canyon. Each drop of water exerts almost imperceptible pressure on the stone's surface. But given enough time, that persistent flow sculpts majestic gorges. Kaizen harnesses the same principle of consistent, low-intensity force. It teaches that it is neither the heroics of rare, monumental effort, nor the sudden revelation of genius that moves us forward, but rather the steady pattern of small choices. In daily life, this might look like adjusting the morning routine to shave off 5 minutes of wasted scrolling, or reorganizing a workspace drawer to reduce the friction of finding tools. These actions require almost no courage or willpower, just mindful observation. And yet they compound into vast improvements in efficiency and morale. The everyday power of Kaizen becomes evident when viewed through the lens of a simple household chore. Imagine washing dishes after dinner. In one approach, the task is an onerous obligation, postponed until after fatigue sets in, leaving you to scrub in frustration. In the Kaizen approach, you might notice that stacking dishes by type speeds the rinsing process, or that soaking the most stubborn pans first saves time overall. These insights feel almost trivial, yet they transform the chore from drudgery into a quietly efficient ritual. In the same way, identifying one minor tweak in your morning routine, laying out clothes the night before, brewing water while you shower, frees up mental space for creative or reflective thought. Historical examples abound beyond Toyota's factory floors. The British Navy's adoption of the chronometer in the 18th century, for instance, was preceded by decades of incremental improvements in clockmaking, each reduction in error measured in seconds per day. Those tiny refinements, iterated upon by successive generations of artisans, culminated in a timepiece precise enough to unlock the secrets of longitude at sea, reshaping global navigation. Similarly, Joseph Priestley's discovery of oxygen emerged not from a solitary eureka moment, but from a series of careful experiments, tweaking the composition of compounds and observing subtle changes. Science, like industry, progresses through the patient layering of small, well-tested adjustments. Yet Kaizen is not merely a technical protocol. It is a mindset, a deep respect for process and for the people who undertake it. In organizations that embrace Kaizen fully, every voice matters. A janitor who notices a leak in a production line, a receptionist who suggests a more intuitive way to manage appointment bookings. Each idea is valued. This culture of continuous improvement fosters ownership and collective intelligence. When individuals understand that their small insights will be heard and acted upon, they become vigilant stewards of quality, alert to opportunities for refinement in every corner. Applying Kaizen personally requires only 2 ingredients: curiosity and patience. Curiosity drives us to notice the small hiccups, the drips and delays that normally fade into the background. Patience reminds us that meaningful change does not demand heroic leaps, but rather the unglamorous work of iteration. To begin, choose one ritual, perhaps your evening wind-down routine, and observe it with fresh eyes. Where do your thoughts wander? Where does friction emerge? Implement one tiny adjustment. Dim the lights a minute earlier. Swap in a short stretch session for mindless scrolling. Replace half the sugar in your tea with a spice like cinnamon. Note how this shift influences your sense of ease or alertness. Allow that experiment to settle into habit. Then move on to the next. The power of Kaizen derives from its feedback loop. Each successful change reinforces confidence in your capacity to improve, generating momentum for the next adjustment. Crucially, Kaizen reframes failure as data rather than disaster. If a tweak proves unhelpful, you learn precisely what doesn't work and move on. This low-stakes environment for experimentation fuels both creativity and resilience, preventing perfectionism from stalling progress. In summary, the Kaizen principle of continuous improvement invites us to reimagine greatness not as a distant summit reached by heroic effort, but as a horizon that recedes as we approach it, guiding us ever onward through countless small steps. By embedding curiosity into our routines, celebrating marginal gains, and fostering a climate of shared insights, we transform both processes and ourselves. Over time, these incremental refinements accumulate into remarkable progress, proving that little by little becomes a lot. Take a moment now to identify just one small adjustment you can make in your day, and trust that over time, the river of your intentions will carve new paths toward lasting success. Discovering your Ikigai. At the center of a life well lived lies a convergence of passion, mission, profession, and vocation. A point of balance the Japanese call Ikigai. Unlike the Western fixation on singular purpose or career ambition, Ikigai unfolds as a dynamic interplay among four foundational elements: what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at. Each of these domains forms a petal in a delicate flower, and where they overlap blooms a sense of fulfillment that sustains long-term motivation. This concept is not an abstract ideal, but a living framework, one that invites us to explore the contours of our everyday activities, relationships, and values in search of deeper resonance. The idea of Ikigai emerged from Okinawa, a subtropical island whose residents boast some of the world's highest concentrations of centenarians. Researchers noticed that these elders often attributed their longevity to a clear sense of purpose. Whether tending a vegetable garden, teaching grandchildren to swim, practicing calligraphy, or simply offering a warm smile to passersby. In every case, the activity combined genuine enjoyment with a felt contribution to others, and a rhythm of practice refined over decades. Unlike transient hobbies or disconnected employment, Ikigai integrates what stirs the heart with what brings value to the community, tethering personal joy to social harmony. To unearth your own Ikigai, begin by mapping these four petals in relation to your life. First, consider what you love, those pursuits that make time dissolve, whether it's composing music, sketching small animals, or leading heartfelt conversations. Let your mind wander through early memories. The thrill you felt building sandcastles on a summer afternoon, the quiet satisfaction of solving a thorny crossword puzzle. These recollections often point to the raw materials of passion that remain intact beneath layers of adult obligation. Next, reflect on what the world needs. This requires looking beyond the self to observe communal gaps or shared longings, improved local schooling, environmental stewardship, deeper social connection, or the simple gift of a well-made loaf of bread. By tuning your radar to societal rhythms, you align personal drive with external demand. The third petal, what you can be paid for, calls for honest assessment of market realities and your own skills. This does not mean choosing money as the sole compass, but rather recognizing that without some form of remuneration or reciprocal value, your service cannot sustain itself. A talented artisan may find ways to sell handcrafted wares. A compassionate listener could build a career in counseling or mentorship. A lover of words might teach creative writing or craft copy for causes they believe in. Finally, ask what you are good at. Here, feedback from others can be invaluable. Notice the compliments you receive. You have a gift for explaining complex ideas simply. Your presence calms anxious colleagues. You spot connections others overlook. These external observations often reveal strengths we discount as ordinary parts of ourselves. Bringing these four elements into alignment is rarely instantaneous. Like tuning a musical instrument, Ikigai demands iterative adjustments. Perhaps you discover that teaching photography, what you love and are good at, meets a community need through local workshops, but lacks adequate financial support. You might then explore online courses or commission-based photo projects to bridge the gap between passion and profession. Or consider someone who loves gardening, who is skilled at nurturing native plants, and who sees a community need for urban pollinator habitats, yet struggles to monetize the endeavor. By experimenting with small pop-up markets, volunteer-driven plant exchanges, or partnerships with local cafes to supply herb planters, they slowly shape a sustainable rhythm that honors all four petals. Historical and biographical examples underscore how Ikigai operates across diverse lives. Take Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, who practiced medicine in Tokyo well into his centenarian years. His Ikigai fused a lifelong passion for healing, the practical need for medical expertise in post-war Japan, the financial structure of a hospital career, and a natural talent for connecting with patients through humor and humility. Or consider Hayao Miyazaki, whose imaginative vision and storytelling prowess align seamlessly with global appetite for animated narratives. His work not only sustained him financially, but also enriched cultural life and inspired countless creators, illustrating the potent ripple effect when personal vocation intersects with universal longing. The search for Ikigai also invites us to embrace the tension between exploration and commitment. Early in the process, you may cycle through various combinations, testing different roles and noticing how each resonates, or doesn't, with your sense of inner harmony. This period of experimentation mirrors scientific inquiry. Formulate hypotheses about your passions and skills, run small-scale trials, gather feedback, refine your approach, and iterate. Over time, patterns emerge, pointing toward a configuration of activities that consistently light up your days while meeting real needs and supporting your livelihood. Ultimately, discovering Ikigai is less about achieving permanent alignment and more about cultivating ongoing awareness. As life circumstances shift, children grow, economic landscapes evolve, personal interests deepen, the contours of your Ikigai may shift as well. The gardener may discover a new passion for urban design. The educator might blend teaching with community organizing. The writer could evolve into a coach for aspiring authors. Each pivot arises from listening attentively to the interplay among what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what sustains you materially. By embracing Ikigai, we move beyond the narrow pursuit of goals to inhabit a broader field of purposeful activity. We learn to celebrate both the spark of passion and the pragmatic structures that sustain it. In doing so, we craft a life not merely of accomplishment, but of deep satisfaction, where every morning's work feels less like a chore and more like an unfolding invitation. May your own journey toward Ikigai inspire you to notice the petals waiting to align and to tend them with patience, curiosity, and heartfelt intention. The Taoist art of Wu Wei. At the heart of Taoist philosophy lies the principle of Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action or non-forcing. This concept is not an excuse for inaction, but an invitation to align ourselves so intimately with the natural flow of circumstances that our choices arise spontaneously, harmoniously, and with minimal friction. Unlike the Western impulse to wrest control over every variable, asks us to cultivate a sensitivity to the rhythms inherent in each situation, much as a skilled dancer tunes into the music's tempo rather than stamping out its beat. Laozi, presumed author of the Tao Te Ching in the 6th century BCE, described the sage as one who acts without striving and accomplishes without effort. In this paradox lies the core of Wu Wei. By releasing the compulsion to force outcomes, one discovers a deeper kind of agency, rooted in attunement and timing. Imagine a river bending gently around a boulder in its path. The water does not pound against the obstacle until it breaks. Instead, it yields, pressing patiently along the stone's contours until a new route forms. Through this yielding, the river does not lose strength, but acquires grace and persistence. In human affairs, Wu Wei calls for a similar responsiveness. When facing a problem at work, the person practicing Wu Wei resists neither challenges nor opportunities, but observes the current of events, gauges the momentum of people and resources, and intervenes at the point of least resistance. This is not passive resignation, but strategic harmony, the intelligence of timing, the art of knowing when to press forward and when to pull back. Laozi's famous verses illustrate this balance. "The soft overcomes the hard," he wrote, "shh," and "the slow overcomes the fast." Like young bamboo that bends under the weight of snow, rather than snapping in rigid defiance, the practitioner of Wu Wei absorbs pressure through adaptability. When decisions unfold in business, politics, or personal life, forcing solutions often breeds unintended side effects: strained relationships, wasted resources, or burnout. Wu Wei suggests an alternative: cultivate flexibility in thought and action so that each initiative flows from clarity about the situation's natural tendencies. By waiting for the bud to swell before pruning, you strengthen the branch rather than cutting it back prematurely. In ancient China, artisans embodied Wu Wei in their crafts. A master calligrapher does not grip the brush with rigid determination. Instead, they soften their wrist, let the brush dance across the paper, and let the characters emerge in a single, fluid stroke. Each mark carries the imprint of both discipline and surrender. Disciplined practice trained the hand. Surrendering to the brush's tip allowed the form to arise without hesitation. In martial arts, the practitioner who yields to the attacker's momentum can redirect force with minimal effort, redirecting an opponent's energy rather than meeting it head-on. These traditions teach that true strength belongs to those who can adapt and flow. Consider a team leader navigating a complex project with shifting priorities. A commanding approach might involve issuing strict directives, monitoring progress hour by hour, and tightening controls, actions that often breed resentment and reduce creativity. A Wu Wei approach begins with understanding the team's natural working style, listening to concerns, and identifying the path of least resistance toward the goal. The leader might reallocate resources to bolster emerging strengths, or postpone less critical tasks until conditions improve organically. By embracing uncertainty, the leader cultivates a fertile environment where ideas sprout without coercion and progress unfolds with collective momentum. In modern innovation, some of the most groundbreaking breakthroughs emerge not from forceful agendas, but from serendipitous alignment. Consider how the structure of the internet evolved. Rather than imposing a rigid hierarchy, designers chose to create protocols that allowed data to find its own route across networks. This architecture of permitted improvisation enabled robustness and rapid adaptation, embodying Wu Wei at a technical level. Similarly, product teams that adopt agile methodologies refrain from exhaustive upfront planning. Instead, they establish guiding principles and let development cycles iterate in response to real-time feedback. This agile flow often outperforms heavyweight command and control structures because it respects the system's inherent dynamics. Practically integrating Wu Wei begins with cultivating awareness, noticing where you habitually push and where circumstances push back. Observe a moment today when frustration flares, perhaps during a stalled conversation or a stalled project milestone. Instead of intensifying effort, pause and ask, "What is this situation asking of me? Which direction does the current favor?" Then adjust by aligning your next action with that natural tendency, much like letting a sail catch the wind rather than beating the waves. Over time, this practice trains you to detect the subtle ebb and flow of events so that interventions arise almost effortlessly, at the juncture where you add maximum leverage. Embracing Wu Wei also requires a willingness to embrace uncertainty. In a culture that prizes certainty and control, it can feel counterintuitive to yield. Yet every system, from ecosystems to economies, operates on complex interdependencies beyond any one individual's grasp. By acknowledging this complexity, we free ourselves from the illusion that force can guarantee outcomes. Instead, we learn to participate gracefully in a larger process, an ongoing dialogue between intention and circumstance. In choosing Wu Wei, we cultivate resilience. When one route is blocked, we pivot. When conditions shift, we adapt. And throughout, we maintain equanimity. The art of Wu Wei thus invites a profound reorientation of how we engage with work, relationships, and personal goals. It is not a retreat into passivity, but an advance into deeper wisdom. One that sees opportunity in yielding, efficacy in subtlety, and authority in attunement. By practicing effortless action, we discover that our most powerful contributions arise when we relinquish the illusion of brute force and step into the flow of events with clarity and ease. In this dance of soft persistence, we find a strength that neither strains nor snaps, but endures and evolves. Buddhist mindfulness of intention. At the heart of Buddhist thought lies the transformative power of intention, known as satana in the Pali Canon. This principle asserts that every moment of conscious choice, every thought that arises, every word we speak, every action we perform, is animated by an underlying intention, and it is this intention that shapes the fabric of our experience. Long before contemporary psychology explored the effects of mindset on behavior, the Buddha taught that the boundary between suffering and liberation is drawn by the quality of our inner motivations. When we cultivate mindful attention to intention, we learn not only to recognize the seeds we plant in our own minds, but also to tend them with clarity, compassion, and wisdom. In its simplest expression, intention in Buddhism refers to the volitional impulse that precedes action. Whether you reach out to help a stranger, turn away in judgment, or remain passive in the face of need, each choice is preceded by a subtle movement of the mind. The Buddha identified intention as the very axis around which ethical conduct and mental liberation revolve. In the first of his foundational teachings, the Four Noble Truths, he observed that suffering arises from craving and aversion, intentions rooted in grasping and pushing away. Conversely, freedom emerges when we cultivate intentions aligned with generosity, kindness, and non-harming. Thus, intention is not a mere abstraction, but the fulcrum of moral transformation. To understand intention, imagine standing at a forked path in the forest before dawn. The darkness obscures the terrain, and your choice of direction sets the course of your journey. If you walk with a mind clouded by fear or anger, each step will echo with shadows, amplifying trepidation. But if you proceed with a mind centered on clear perception and goodwill, aware of each footfall, attentive to the rustle of leaves underfoot, your path becomes a living meditation. The same ground exists in both cases, yet the quality of your inward purpose shapes how you navigate it. In everyday life, the fork appears countless times. In a conversation about a sensitive topic, in the decision to take on a new project, in the choice to respond defensively or with openness to criticism. Early Buddhist texts offer practical exercises for unveiling and refining intention. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha prescribes mindfulness of mental states alongside mindfulness of the body and senses. Practitioners are invited to notice the arising of desire, aversion, or confusion, to label these movements without judgment, and to observe their passing. This process trains the mind to recognize intention as a phenomenon that can be observed, analyzed, and, over time, reshaped. In modern terms, it resembles the practice of metacognition, stepping back from one's thoughts to witness their patterns. Yet it extends beyond mere observation into the realm of ethical cultivation, transforming not only awareness, but character. Consider a common scenario, receiving an unexpected email from a colleague that hints at criticism. In the automatic rush of reactivity, the mind might flare with indignation. They don't appreciate my efforts. That initial finger of intention, fueled by pride, sets the tone for a defensive reply. But if you pause, observe the arising irritation in the body, a tightening of the chest, a clench of the jaw, and anchor your attention in the intention behind your impulse, you gain a moment's clarity. You may notice that the real need is for understanding, rather than rebuttal. From this ground of mindful intention, your response can shift from reactive defensiveness to curious inquiry. Thank you for your feedback. Could you clarify what you'd like me to adjust? In this reframing lies the alchemy of intention, transforming a potential conflict into a dialogue. The ethical dimension of intention shines most brightly when we consider the practice of right intention, one of the 8 factors in the Noble Eightfold Path. Right intention encompasses renunciation of harmful desires, cultivation of goodwill, and harmlessness toward all beings. It does not demand sudden perfection, but encourages a steady orientation of the mind toward compassion and generosity. In business or creative pursuits, this might look like setting a daily aspiration before beginning work. May my actions benefit others, or may I remain free of grasping for undue praise. Such simple declarations align our efforts with a larger field of purpose, reminding us that personal success need not come at the expense of others. The stories of venerable Buddhist masters offer vivid illustrations of intention's power. Consider the tale of Venerable Angulimala, once a feared bandit, whose fierce intentions were rechanneled through the Buddha's compassionate instruction. By recognizing the destructive momentum of his mind and cultivating remorse and resolve, Angulimala transformed from enforcer of violence into a revered monk who embodied non-harming. His journey underscores that even the darkest intentions can be redirected through mindful awareness and ethical resolve. Modern research into the psychology of intention echoes these ancient insights. Studies reveal that people who articulate clear, prosocial intentions before undertaking a task exhibit greater resilience, enhanced focus, and deeper satisfaction in their achievements. In educational settings, students who frame their work as a means of helping others report higher engagement and performance. In healthcare, clinicians who reflect on compassionate intentions before rounds experience lower burnout and greater patient connection. These findings underscore the universal potency of intention as a catalyst for both personal well-being and collective flourishing. To integrate mindful intention into daily life, begin with brief pauses at transition points. Before opening email, before entering a meeting room, before starting a creative session. In each pause, take a slow, deliberate breath and ask inwardly, what is my purpose right now? Notice the subtle confluence of motivations, desire for achievement, fear of failure, wish to serve others, and gently guide them toward clarity. If fear looms large, acknowledge it without collapsing into it. I feel nervous, yet I choose to act with integrity. If ambition rises unchecked, temper it with generosity. I seek success, and I intend to share my resources. Over time, these micro-practices form a reservoir of mindful intention, steering your choices as surely as a rudder guides a ship. In this way, the Buddhist mindfulness of intention teaches us that success is not solely measured by outcomes, but by the quality of the inner winds that propel us. When we learn to observe and refine our intentions, we align our actions with both ethical purpose and skillful means. Our ambitions then become threads woven into a larger tapestry of compassion, clarity, and shared well-being. By tending the seeds of intention in each moment, we cultivate a garden of enduring fulfillment, a life shaped not only by what we achieve, but by the mindful awareness that sanctifies every step along the way. Definiteness of purpose, Napoleon Hill. True achievement begins with a clear, unwavering statement of intent. At the core of Napoleon Hill's success philosophy lies the principle of definiteness of purpose. The conviction that only those who know precisely what they want can marshal the full force of their talents, resources, and will to attain it. Hill distilled this lesson after studying the lives of Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and other titans of industry. Each had first forged an unshakable vision, so vivid that it steered every decision, resisted every distraction, and ignited persistent action in the face of doubt. For Hill, vagueness breeds hesitation, clarity begets confidence. When purpose is definite, the mind becomes a magnet, drawing toward itself the people, opportunities, and ideas needed to translate dream into reality. Imagine a ship setting sail without chart or compass, its captain content only to see where the wind blows. Such a vessel may drift across calm seas, but it will never arrive at a destined port. In contrast, consider a lighthouse cutting through fog on a rocky coast, its beams slicing the darkness with unerring precision. Mariners steer by that light, adjusting course moment by moment to stay on a narrow path towards safe harbor. In Hill's metaphor, your definiteness of purpose is the lighthouse, a single light guiding flame that shapes every choice and reorients your energy whenever waves of uncertainty surge. Without it, talents scatter like flickering embers in a breeze. With it, all creative sparks coalesce into a blazing fire. Hill insisted that definiteness of purpose must be expressed in writing, stated with emotion, and revisited daily. He urged aspirants to draft a concise declaration of their major goal, a precise statement of what they intend to achieve, why it matters, and by when they will accomplish it. This written pledge, when read aloud each morning and evening, serves as a psychological blueprint. It programs the subconscious mind to scan for solutions, strategies, and alliances that support the stated aim. Countless entrepreneurs have reported serendipitous encounters and sudden insights that seem to materialize from nowhere. Hill attributed these chance events to the subconscious mind's tireless pursuit of the declared purpose. Thomas Edison's quest to invent a practical electric light bulb provides a vivid historical case. Though contemporaries labeled his project quixotic, Edison entered his Menlo Park laboratory each day with a singular objective: to find a filament that would glow steadily under electrical current without burning up. He kept meticulous notes, ran thousands of experiments, and communicated his goal in crisp phrases. Phrases that guided not just his own efforts, but attracted investors, assistants, and collaborators who recognized the clarity of his vision. In Edison's own words, "I never did anything worth doing by accident, nor did any of my inventions come by accident. They came by work." His laboratory was a living testament to definiteness of purpose, every corridor echoing with the ambition that would one day light up the world. Definiteness of purpose also shapes daily routines. A writer determined to complete a novel by year's end will plan specific word counts, schedule writing blocks, and protect those hours as inviolable appointments. A community organizer committed to establishing a new youth center will map out fundraising milestones, recruit volunteers with targeted appeals, and tailor every conversation to advance that singular mission. In each case, the presence of a clear aim crowds out trivial pursuits and momentary whims, channeling attention toward productive action. Hill observed that when purpose is vague, "I want to be successful," or "I want to make a difference," the mind cannot distinguish between urgent demands and peripheral noise. Only a sharply focused objective marshals effort with ruthless efficiency. Beyond individual effort, definiteness of purpose also influences how others engage with us. Clarity of vision inspires confidence in partners, mentors, and financiers. When you articulate precisely where you intend to go and why it matters, listeners instinctively assess the feasibility of your plan and decide whether to lend their support. The anecdotes Hill gathered: bankers who extended credit to untested entrepreneurs, seasoned executives who volunteered their mentorship, often hinge on the entrepreneur's ability to communicate purpose with vivid conviction. In these moments, your definitive goal becomes more than a personal compass. It becomes a rallying point that draws talent and resources to your cause. Yet purpose alone does not guarantee progress. Hill emphasized the need to couple definiteness with persistence, self-discipline, and a willingness to revise one's strategy in response to feedback. A plan that remains unchanged in the face of new information is a brittle artifact. A goal that shifts with every setback is a leaf in a storm. The successful blend determination with flexibility, holding the ultimate destination steady while adapting the route along the way. Thomas Edison altered his materials dozens of times. Carnegie adjusted his steel mill's processes in response to market demand. Each demonstrated that clarity of end goal and openness to new tactics form a synergistic partnership. To cultivate definiteness of purpose in your own life, begin by carving out a quiet hour, free from calls or notifications, to reflect on what you truly want to achieve over the next year. Write a single, unambiguous sentence that captures that goal. Below it, note why this aim stirs your deepest aspirations. Underneath, list the 3 most critical actions you will take this week to advance toward it. Each day, read your declaration aloud, visualize its attainment in vivid detail, and carry that image with you as you navigate your schedule. Whenever you feel pulled toward less meaningful activity, return to your written purpose. It will act as an ever-present filter, reminding you where to invest your energy. By embracing Napoleon Hill's principle of definiteness of purpose, you transform ambition into concrete design. The mind, once adrift in a sea of possibilities, becomes a laser beam, slicing through distractions with resolute precision. Opportunities that once lay hidden in the margins of chance reveal themselves along the beam's path. And every decision aligns with the singular objective you have dared to claim. In the steadfast glow of this inner lighthouse, you navigate the complexities of life with clarity, confidence, and unwavering resolve. The mind is a canvas upon which the future can be sketched in vivid detail, long before a single step is taken. And it is through creative visualization that this latent power is summoned into being. At its essence, creative visualization rests on the conviction that the images we hold in our imagination carry an almost magnetic force, drawing our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors into alignment with the scenarios we repeatedly rehearse in the theater of the mind. When an athlete mentally rehearses each trajectory of a free throw, when an entrepreneur pictures the faces of satisfied customers, or when a musician envisions fingers dancing across the keys in perfect harmony, they are not indulging in idle fantasy. They are activating neural pathways, strengthening the body, sharpening focus, and priming the subconscious to recognize and seize opportunities once thought beyond reach. This principle finds scientific validation in the study of motor imagery. Researchers have shown that visualizing a physical action stimulates many of the same areas of the brain as actually performing that action. In one classic experiment, participants who mentally rehearsed playing a piano passage exhibited neural changes nearly identical to those who had practiced it physically. Their mental practice improved performance, refined timing, and reduced errors, underscoring the brain's remarkable capacity to learn through imagery alone. Yet beyond muscle memory, creative visualization reaches deeper into the architecture of motivation. By vividly imagining success, seeing it, feeling it, even hearing the applause, we generate the emotional energy that sustains long-term effort. This emotional rehearsal, like a rehearsal dinner before the wedding day, lubricates the nerves and steels the resolve needed to carry our visions across the finish line. To harness this power, the first step is to craft a clear, sensory-rich mental scene. Rather than a bland affirmation of "I will succeed," one envisions a specific moment. Crossing the stage to receive a diploma, hearing one's name called in victory, or closing a deal with a handshake that seals months of negotiation. Engage all senses. Notice the scent of polished wood in the auditorium, the warmth of the spotlight, the subtle tremor of pride in your chest, the applause rippling through the air. The more detailed the image, the more convincingly the subconscious mind treats it as an experiential rehearsal, rather than a mere hypothetical. Over time, these mental rehearsals smooth the transition from intention to action, reducing the friction of doubt and sharpening the clarity of choice. Historical figures have long employed creative visualization as a cornerstone of their achievement. Walt Disney famously sketched the front gates of Disneyland long before a single shovel broke ground, folding the image into every plan and every pitch he made. His collaborators and investors, exposed to these sketches again and again, began to see the park as an inevitability rather than a pipe dream. Visualization became a shared blueprint. Similarly, Helen Keller, who overcame the profound barriers of deafblindness, described in her memoirs how she would imagine herself walking across a garden in the sunlight, feeling the petals of flowers under her fingers. This inner vision sustained her during moments of deep isolation, and became a beacon that guided her steps into public life, advocacy, and authorship. In everyday practice, creative visualization can be woven into one's routine with elegance and ease. A writer might begin each morning session with a 2-minute vision of the chapter's arc fully formed, the rising tension, the pivotal dialogue, the emotional coda, before placing fingers on the keyboard. An executive facing a high-stakes presentation could spend moments in solitude, picturing the rhythm of their speech, the nods of comprehension in the audience, and the energized buzz that follows. Even mundane tasks, training for a race, learning a new language, or saving toward a goal, benefit from brief but focused mental rehearsals that prime both the psyche and the physiology for success. Yet visualization alone is not enough. It must be coupled with grounded action. The mind's image serves as a lodestar, but one must still walk the path. Imagine a sculptor who dreams of a statue emerging from marble. Without the chisel's strike, the vision remains locked in potential. Thus, after each visualization session, translate the insights into tangible steps. Draft an outline. Make incremental practice runs. Reach out to a mentor. Adjust your calendar to reflect new priorities. This interplay between inner rehearsal and outward effort creates a feedback loop. Mental images sharpen practical plans, and small victories reinforce the clarity and vividness of future visualizations. Over time, consistent application of creative visualization rewires habitual thought patterns, shifting from a mindset of scarcity and doubt to one of possibility and expectation. The subconscious mind, having been shown the desired outcome in meticulous detail, begins to scan the environment for alignments, ideas, connections, resources that match the imagined scenario. Serendipitous conversations, chance introductions, overlooked details suddenly present themselves as invitations to move ever closer to the envisioned success. In this sense, visualization not only primes the individual, it orchestrates the subtle currents of circumstance to converge upon the dream. In embracing creative visualization, we acknowledge that the boundary between imagination and reality is more permeable than we often assume. The images we cultivate within the sanctum of our consciousness ripple outward, shaping our attitudes, guiding our choices, and magnetizing external opportunities. By taking deliberate control of this inner canvas, painting our aspirations with sensory detail and emotional resonance, we invite the future to take form around us. And as these visions crystallize into action, we come to realize that the mind, rightly guided, can sketch the road to any destination we truly desire. 9. The Law of Attraction. The Law of Attraction proposes that like draws to like, that our predominant thoughts and emotions act as magnets, summoning circumstances, people, and events that resonate with our inner state. This idea, rooted in both ancient philosophical traditions and modern popular psychology, suggests that what we focus on expands. Attention shapes perception, and perception, in turn, filters reality. When we dwell on lack or fear, our internal narrative becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, sifting out evidence of scarcity and reinforcing anxiety. Conversely, when we cultivate thoughts of abundance, possibility, and gratitude, we open ourselves to noticing and thereby inviting opportunities that align with that vibrational frequency. In its contemporary form, the law of attraction gained widespread prominence through works like Esther and Jerry Hicks's Teachings of Abraham, and Rhonda Byrne's best-selling The Secret, yet its lineage stretches back millennia. Hindu scriptures teach of the power of intention and focus in shaping karma. Hermetic texts of ancient Egypt and Greece assert that as above, so below, implying a correspondence between thought forms and outer reality. Across cultures, mystical and philosophical schools have affirmed that consciousness is not a passive mirror, but an active sculptor of experience. At the core of this principle lies the understanding that our subconscious mind, where habitual beliefs and emotional patterns reside, functions like a powerful autopilot. If we have internalized notions of unworthiness or perpetual struggle, our subconscious will unconsciously seek experiences to validate those beliefs, perpetuating a cycle of confirmation. To break free, we must engage in conscious reprogramming, deliberately choosing thoughts and feelings that reflect our deepest aspirations and reinforcing them through consistent practice. Creative visualization, affirmations, and gratitude journaling serve as practical techniques for attuning our inner state to the frequency of abundance. By writing down 3 things we appreciate each morning, we shift neural pathways away from complaint toward recognition of value. By repeating affirmations, not as empty slogans, but as sincere declarations of intent, we begin to quiet the inner critic and amplify the voice of possibility. These rituals do not guarantee that every desire materializes overnight, but they foster a mindset of receptivity, in which subtle coincidences and helpful encounters are more readily perceived and acted upon. Consider an entrepreneur who envisions a thriving online community around sustainable living. Each day, she spends minutes immersing herself in the feelings associated with that success: joy, connection, purpose, before planning concrete actions like launching a podcast episode or reaching out to collaborators. As she aligns her thoughts and activities, She begins to notice small synchronicities, a chance introduction to an influential blogger, a timely invitation to speak at an eco-conference, or a sudden insight into refining her message. While skeptics may label these occurrences coincidences, the entrepreneur understands them as the unfolding of an inner vibration finding its echo in the world. Critics of the law of attraction warn against magical thinking or ignoring practical obstacles. Yet its most compelling teachers emphasize that intention without action is hollow. The law of attraction is not about wishful daydreaming, but about shaping one's mindset into an engine of initiative. By maintaining an internal focus on positive outcome, we prime ourselves to take inspired steps, whether through networking, learning new skills, or iterating on our projects, that translate vision into reality. Moreover, the law of attraction intersects with neuroscience in illuminating ways. Research on attentional bias shows that what we look for, we find. Individuals primed to see examples of generosity will more readily register acts of kindness in their environment. Studies on mood-congruent memory demonstrate that our emotional state influences which memories surface, and thus how we interpret present events. These cognitive processes confirm that shifting our mental focus can actually change our lived experience, validating, in secular terms, the core insight of attraction. By embracing the law of attraction, we reclaim agency over the narrative we tell ourselves. Rather than drifting on the tides of external circumstance, we learn to steer with the compass of our desires, tempered by reason and grounded in action. As we cultivate thoughts of abundance, gratitude, and possibility, we draw into our sphere the people, the opportunities, and the serendipities that resonate with our highest intentions, transforming our inner landscape into a fertile field where success can bloom. 10 Atomic Habits. True transformation often springs not from sweeping revolutions, but from the cumulative effect of tiny, consistent changes, a principle crystallized in James Clear's concept of atomic habits. At its core, this philosophy asserts that habits are the fundamental units of our behavior, much like atoms are the fundamental units of matter. By focusing on making habits just slightly better, improving by just 1% each day, we harness the power of compound growth. Over time, these marginal gains accumulate into remarkable improvement, reshaping our identity, performance, and outcomes in ways that dramatic but unsustainable efforts cannot match. The word atomic carries a dual resonance here. On one hand, it evokes the notion of minuscule scale, a habit so small and simple that it feels almost trivial. Putting on workout clothes after waking, writing just 50 words every morning, or drinking a glass of water before checking email. On the other hand, it reminds us of the latent power within each habit. Just as an atom contains immense energy when properly harnessed, even the smallest habitual action can unleash disproportionate influence when repeated over weeks, months, and years. This duality, tiny yet powerful, is the engine of atomic habits. James Clear's framework breaks habit formation into 4 fundamental steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. The cue triggers the brain's habit loop, the craving fuels the desire for change, the response is the actual behavior, and the reward completes the loop, reinforcing the habit's neural circuitry. By understanding and shaping each of these components, we can design environments and routines that make good habits inevitable and bad habits difficult. For instance, to encourage daily reading, one might place a book next to the coffee maker, feel the anticipation of new insights, read a single paragraph each morning, response, and savor a moment of reflection, reward. Over time, this mini routine cements itself, unfolding almost automatically as part of one's day. Consider the metaphor of a plane in flight. We often focus on the moment of takeoff, the dramatic push against inertia, and the landing's precision. Yet true aviation success depends on constant course corrections, tiny adjustments to the rudder, minute shifts in engine thrust, and subtle changes in altitude to account for shifting winds. These micro-corrections keep the aircraft on course for thousands of miles. Similarly, atomic habits function as continuous course adjustments for our lives, guiding us toward our goals with minimal effort, yet maximal fidelity to our desired trajectory. To see this principle in action, imagine someone aiming to improve their health. Setting a goal to lose 20 pounds can feel overwhelming, leading to rigid diets that collapse under daily temptations. In contrast, an atomic habit approach would encourage starting with one small change, adding a single vegetable to one meal each day. That shift, seemingly inconsequential, creates a cue, what's on my plate, stirs a craving for the satisfaction of a nutrient-rich bite, elicits the response of choosing greens, and yields the reward of a subtly energized feeling afterward. Once this habit takes root, the individual might layer on another atomic habit, taking the stairs once instead of the elevator, swapping soda for sparkling water, each building quietly atop the last until weight loss and well-being naturally follow. Historical and biographical examples illustrate the enduring power of this approach. Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, conducted his groundbreaking pea plant experiments not in a frenzied sprint, but through quiet persistence, meticulously planting, observing, and recording data on a handful of plants each growing season. His one experiment at a time routine yielded insights that would reshape biology. Similarly, Benjamin Franklin cultivated his moral virtues by focusing on one virtue per week: temperance, silence, industry, tracking his successes and lapses with a simple chart. Over the course of a year, these small, focused efforts carved Franklin's character into the model of moderation and diligence he later extolled. In the realm of business, Kaizen's continuous improvement echoes atomic habits at scale. Toyota's assembly lines became arenas for countless employees to offer one small suggestion each day, whether to tweak the placement of a tool or streamline a bolt tightening sequence. These atomic suggestions, aggregated over decades, propelled Toyota from near bankruptcy in the post-war era to global leadership in manufacturing efficiency and quality. The lesson is clear. Monumental progress need not originate from a single visionary decree, but can accrue from countless modest innovations. Designing atomic habits also means acknowledging the environmental and social contexts that shape behavior. Clear emphasizes the maxim, environment design over willpower design. Rather than relying on fleeting bursts of self-control, which inevitably wane, we structure our surroundings to make desired habits obvious and convenient. A writer might keep a notebook on the pillow to prompt nightly journaling. Someone aiming to declutter could place a donation box by the front door as a cue to remove one item each day. Social context, too, wields potent influence. Joining a running club, a code review group, a book discussion circle creates implicit norms that nudge us towards sustained engagement. Yet atomic habits also address the challenge of breaking unwanted routines. By inverting the four-step habit loop, making cues invisible, reducing craving by reframing outcomes, raising friction to responses, and eliminating rewards for bad habits, we can gradually dismantle behaviors that no longer serve us. To curb mindless social media scrolling, one might uninstall apps from the phone's home screen, cue removal, remind oneself of lost time, craving reduction, introduce a brief password barrier, response friction, and log the hours saved into a productivity tracker, reward elimination. With iteration and patience, the old habit loses its hold. The ultimate aim of atomic habits transcends mere behavior change. It is the sculpting of identity. Clear posits a two-layer model. First, outcomes, the results we seek, and second, identity, the beliefs about who we are. While traditional goal setting fixates on outcomes, I want to run a marathon, identity-based habits ask, who do I wish to become? A runner who logs miles regularly, a reader who devours a chapter each evening, a person who notices excess and chooses simplicity. By repeating atomic habits that align with this aspirational identity, we reinforce self-perception. Each completed habit is a vote for the person we intend to be. Over time, our actions and identity coalesce, creating durable change that radiates beyond individual behaviors. Practically, to apply atomic habits, begin with a simple experiment. Choose one area of life where you seek improvement: fitness, focus, creativity, generosity, and identify the smallest possible habit you can commit to today. Define the cue, articulate the craving, specify the response, and clarify the reward. Track your success on a calendar, celebrating streaks rather than agonizing over slip-ups. After a week, reflect. Has this micro habit stuck? Does it feel natural, or does it require too much effort? Adjust accordingly, always privileging simplicity and consistency. Then, when the first habit feels ingrained, layer in the next atomic step. By embracing the power of marginal gains, we transform the daunting prospect of self-improvement into an inviting series of tiny experiments, each with its own immediate feedback and sense of progress. Over time, these atomic habits compound, propelling us forward in ways that feel organic and sustainable. In the quiet rhythm of daily life, small choices echo into significant change, proving that greatness is not a destination reached in one bound, but a horizon eternally drawn closer by the sum of countless tiny steps. 11 SMART Goals Framework Passage: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. These 5 criteria form the backbone of the SMART Goals Framework, a method originally developed in the 1980s to bring clarity and structure to goal setting in business and management. At its essence, SMART transforms vague aspirations into actionable plans by demanding precision at every step. A goal to improve communication becomes, under SMART scrutiny, to deliver a weekly 10-minute team update each Friday for the next 3 months, incorporating feedback from at least 2 colleagues after each presentation. This clarity ensures that the mind cannot wander into ambiguity. Instead, it sees a clear target, a way to measure progress, and a deadline that focuses attention. A specific goal leaves no room for misinterpretation. Where general aims breed indecision, I should network more, specific goals compel decision. I will reach out to 2 alumni on LinkedIn every Monday morning. Measurability prevents the mind from floating in subjective impressions. Rather than wondering whether your networking feels sufficient, you count actual messages sent. Achievability demands an honest assessment of resources and constraints. A new manager might set out to coach every team member individually weekly, but if scheduling conflicts make that impossible, the goal undermines itself by sowing frustration. Relevance connects the goal to broader objectives. Without relevance, even a well-formulated goal can drain energy if it doesn't serve your core mission. Finally, time-bound ensures urgency. A goal without a deadline drifts into the realm of maybe later. When applied correctly, SMART goals create a feedback loop of reinforcement. In one case study from the nonprofit sector, an organization seeking to increase volunteer engagement replaced the goal "improve volunteer involvement" with "grow active volunteer participation by 20% over the next 6 months" by hosting 1 orientation session per month and following up individually with attendees. This refined objective allowed coordinators to track attendance, monitor repeat involvement, and adjust their approach when turnout lagged. Measurable milestones revealed precisely where the plan needed tweaking, perhaps shifting session times or adjusting the orientation content, rather than leaving coordinators to guess what might resonate better. On a personal level, consider an artist who wants to build an online following. Gain more followers. Becomes increase Instagram followers from 1,000 to 1,500 by posting 3 original artworks per week for the next 8 weeks and engaging with 5 new artists daily. With this structure, the artist knows exactly what to do each day, sees tangible progress on the follower count, and can recalibrate if growth stalls, perhaps by experimenting with different hashtags or carving out short tutorial videos. SMART's emphasis on timeline can also catalyze momentum. Parkinson's law suggests that work expands to fill the time allotted. By setting a tight but feasible deadline, you harness that pressure to maintain forward motion. A goal to learn basic conversational Spanish might read, "Complete Duolingo's Spanish Basics course by June 30th, practicing 10 minutes daily." With each day's practice logged, progress becomes visible, and the looming deadline concentrates effort. Crucially, SMART goals are not meant to be static. They benefit from regular review and revision. At monthly checkpoints, revisit each element. Has the goal remained specific, or have new variables emerged? Is the metric still meaningful, or should you refine what you measure? Does the timeline still align with other commitments? Such recalibration prevents goals from becoming outdated or misaligned with shifting priorities. ensuring that your targets remain both challenging and attainable. Embedding SMART goals into daily life requires only two simple tools: a brief planning session and a tracking mechanism. Each week, carve out 15 minutes to define or refine one SMART goal aligned with your larger objectives. Record it in a visible place, whether a digital dashboard, a journal, or a sticky note on your monitor. Then commit to logging your progress daily or weekly, celebrating small wins and diagnosing obstacles. Over time, this disciplined cycle of planning, action, and review becomes second nature, guiding your energy toward outcomes that matter most. By insisting on specificity, measurability, achievability, relevance, and timeliness, the SMART Goals framework channels ambition into structured action. It bridges the gap between dreaming and doing, ensuring that each objective resonates with purpose and withstands the scrutiny of reality. In the clarity of a SMART goal, motivation finds direction, progress becomes visible, and success emerges, not as a distant hope, but as a sequence of deliberate, measurable steps. Cultivating abundance mindset. At its essence, an abundance mindset is a way of seeing the world that assumes possibilities are plentiful, resources are renewable, and success for one person does not diminish the prospects of another. In contrast to a scarcity mindset, which views life as a zero-sum game, where gains for others are perceived as losses to oneself, abundance thinking opens the heart to generosity, collaboration, and creative problem-solving. This shift does not require deluding oneself into blind optimism. Rather, it asks us to recognize the underlying wealth of ideas, opportunities, and goodwill that circulate around us, waiting to be harnessed. Philosophers from Cicero to Emerson have extolled the virtues of generosity, noting that the mind loves the things it prizes most, and that what we treasure expands in our experience. Modern psychological research confirms this insight. Individuals who practice gratitude and focus on what they already have report higher levels of well-being, greater resilience, and more innovative thinking. Abundance is at its core an orientation of attention, choosing to notice the ripples of opportunity rather than the dents of defect. When we pivot from "there isn't enough" to "there's more than I know," we unlock a creative energy that propels us toward new solutions and connections. Consider the metaphor of a meadow at sunrise, its grass shimmering with dew, wildflowers nodding in the gentle breeze. A scarcity mindset is like surveying that meadow and fixating on the patches of bare soil, or the occasional wilted bloom. An abundance mindset, by contrast, drinks in the kaleidoscope of color, the hum of pollinators, the chorus of birdsong, recognizing that the meadow's richness is far greater than any single imperfection. In our professional and personal lives, that meadow represents the countless talents, perspectives, and resources we often overlook when we judge too narrowly what is available. One practical way to cultivate abundance is through a daily gratitude practice. Each morning or evening, set aside a quiet moment to recall 3 things, large or small, that went well or for which you feel appreciation. They need not be grand: a colleague's thoughtful email, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the taste of a good cup of tea. Writing these down in a journal magnifies their impact. With each entry, the lens of attention tilts toward what is generous in your life, and over weeks, the habit rewires neural circuits to seek out positive experiences. As gratitude blossoms, so too does the conviction that life contains ample gifts. Another avenue is reframing competition as co-creation. Instead of viewing a peer's success as a threat, invite collaboration. When 2 chefs vie for the same clientele, they might instead share techniques, co-host a tasting event, or recommend each other's specialties. In this dance of generosity, both benefit. They learn new skills, expand their networks, and reinvent the field itself. History is rife with examples. Wright brothers' open sharing of aeronautical data, open-source software communities, interdisciplinary research consortia, where abundance-driven cooperation has accelerated innovation far beyond what any single actor could achieve alone. Affirmations and visualizations can further reinforce abundant thinking. Repeating phrases like "opportunities flow to me," or imagining a gathering of mentors and allies cheering your progress sets a mental tone of plenty. The mind, guided by these positive signals, begins to spotlight doors that might otherwise remain closed. But as with all mindset work, such exercises must be coupled with action. Reaching out to new contacts, volunteering skills, or sharing resources without expectation of immediate return. Actively giving time or expertise not only cements the belief in abundance, but also establishes karmic reciprocity. Generosity invites generosity, weaving a net of support beneath every endeavor. Cultivating abundance also means releasing the grip of comparison. In the age of social media, it is tempting to measure our worth against carefully curated highlight reels. An abundance mindset reminds us that behind every success story lie unseen struggles, that each individual's path is unique, and that comparing fruits on different trees obscures the nourishment offered by our own branch. By turning inward, reflecting on personal strengths, values, and achievements, we break free from the envy cycle and open space for true growth. Journaling prompts such as, "What progress have I made compared to 1 year ago?" or "What unique gifts do I bring to my work?" guide us back to an intrinsic sense of plenty. Finally, an abundance mindset flourishes when anchored in service. By asking, "How can I contribute value to others today?" we invert the scarcity narrative of "What can I get?" into the generosity of "What can I give?" Whether through mentoring a colleague, sharing a well-researched article, or simply listening with full presence, small acts of service generate ripples that return in unexpected ways. The world, seen through the lens of abundance, becomes a living tapestry of interdependent gifts, each thread reinforcing the whole. In embracing an abundance mindset, we transform our relationship with success from one of fear and limitation into one of trust and expansiveness. We learn that every resource, every connection, and every spark of inspiration is part of a vast ecosystem of potential. By practicing gratitude, co-creating with others, reframing competition, and serving generously, we awaken to the truth that life brims with opportunities waiting to be realized. And in that boundless field of possibility, we discover that abundance is not merely an outcome, but a way of being. An invitation to live with an open hand, a generous heart, and a mind attuned to the infinite. Resilience through adversity. Resilience is the capacity to withstand pressure, to endure hardship without fracturing, and ultimately to emerge from difficulty stronger than before. Whereas many view failure or suffering as setbacks to avoid at all costs, resilience reframes adversity as a forge, a crucible, in which character and capability are tempered. This perspective does not romanticize pain, but recognizes that when storms assail us, we have the opportunity to discover depths of courage, adaptability, and inner resourcefulness that lie dormant in calm weather. Like steel, strengthened through heat and cooling, the resilient individual learns to welcome challenge as necessary fuel for growth. At its core, resilience draws on the understanding that life naturally includes both joy and suffering. The Stoics taught that expecting unbroken ease invites greater distress. Instead, they counseled a mindset of premeditated acceptance, amor fati, the love of fate. Similarly, the Japanese art of kintsugi teaches that what is broken can be mended with golden seams, turning the cracks into beauty. These ideas are not just poetic. Neuroscience confirms that adversity can catalyze growth. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline sharpen focus, fuel problem solving, and deepen memory. Small controlled challenges build up your capacity to cope. Like a vaccine for the mind, stress in small doses prepares you for greater trials. Picture a tree on a coastal plain, battered by wind year after year. It bends, it flexes, its roots dig deeper, until one day, that wind-scarred tree stands stronger than any tree grown in stillness. So it is with us. Each hardship, a lost job, a breakup, a diagnosis, bends us, but invites us to deepen our roots. Real people live this truth. J.K. Rowling faced rejection 12 times, but she didn't stop. She revised, she persisted, and Harry Potter became a world that changed hers. Or Nelson Mandela, 27 years behind bars, yet he emerged, not bitter, but transformed, resilient, with a vision of reconciliation that reshaped a nation. Not all resilience is global. Some is quiet and deeply personal. The parent, caring for a child through illness. The student, learning again after a concussion. The survivor, choosing meaning after loss. These are the daily heroes who turn wounds into wisdom. Resilience is a practice, a mindset. First, reframe the challenge, not a threat, but a teacher. Not something happening to you, but for you. Then, build your supports. Talk to someone. Let your community be your safety net. Take one small action, just one. It could be enough to break the inertia and start healing. Try a failure log. Each setback, write it down. Write the lesson too. You'll see how far you've come. Practice mindfulness. Just observe. Let the hard thoughts pass like leaves floating down a stream. Care for your body. Sleep, eat, breathe, stretch. These simple things are anchors when everything else drifts. And above all, reshape your story. You are not a victim. You are a work in progress. You are evolving. Resilience is not about being unbreakable. It's about being bendable, like bamboo, like seagrass. Pain is real, but suffering is how we respond to that pain. Tell yourself the story, where each valley, each challenge is building you. In the end, we become the smiths of our own transformation. We step into the forge. We come out sharper, wiser, kinder. Our scars are not flaws, they are stories. They are gold. And tomorrow, whatever comes, we will meet it, not with fear, but with quiet strength. Because we've been here before. And we know we will rise again. 14. The purpose-driven life. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy centers on the profound idea that life's primary drive is not pleasure or power, but the search for meaning. In his harrowing memoir, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl recounts life in Nazi concentration camps and observes that prisoners who discovered a personal purpose, whether hope of reuniting with loved ones, commitment to finish a work in progress, or resolve to bear witness, were far more likely to survive than those who succumbed to despair. This insight lays bare a fundamental principle. Even in the bleakest circumstances, the human spirit can flourish when anchored to meaning greater than immediate comfort or safety. Frankl argued that meaning can be found in three broad avenues: through what we create or accomplish, through experiences we encounter and values we hold, and through the attitude we adopt toward unavoidable suffering. Creation may take the form of work, art, relationships, or service. Experiencing includes love, appreciation of beauty, and encounters with nature or culture. And attitude speaks to our ability to choose our response when circumstances offer no alternatives. For Frankl, suffering stripped of meaning is torture, but suffering embraced as a path to transcendence becomes an act of heroic self-determination. Imagine two climbers caught in a sudden snowstorm on a narrow ridge. One collapses into panic, seeing only the immediate peril and bereft of hope. The other draws on a vision of summiting and returning home to family, each breath fueled by the image of reunion. The ridge remains the same, the storm's ferocity unchanged, yet the inner experience diverges. One crumbles under the weight of meaninglessness, the other presses forward, finding strength and purpose. This contrast exemplifies Frankl's thesis that our inner stance toward suffering can transform agony into an opportunity for personal triumph. On a daily scale, purpose guides decisions large and small. A teacher facing chronic underfunding may keep going because she envisions her students' futures brightened by knowledge she imparts. A physician treating terminal patients may endure long hours driven by the conviction that compassionate presence eases final passages. In each case, the presence of a why overshadows the hardship of the how, turning routine challenges into meaningful service. Frankl famously wrote, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how," reminding us that purpose and resilience are intimately entwined. Frankl's logotherapy techniques invite us to clarify our purpose through reflection and action. One method is the Socratic dialogue with oneself, posing questions like, "What gives my life significance?" and probing beneath surface answers until a deeply personal answer emerges. Another is paradoxical intention, deliberately confronting an anxiety, rehearsing the worst-case scenario aloud to demystify and diffuse its power. By intentionally facing fear, we reclaim agency and reaffirm the meaning we choose to uphold, even in the face of dread. Consider the story of Edith Eva Eger, a survivor of Auschwitz who became a clinical psychologist. After liberation, she struggled with trauma until she recognized her calling to help others heal through the very insights born of her own pain. Her journey illustrates Frankl's third path to meaning, attitude toward suffering, transforming personal wounds into instruments of empathy and guidance for others. Through her work, Eger demonstrates that suffering need not imprison us. It can open a portal to compassion and purpose that enriches countless lives. In contemporary life, meaning need not arise solely from dramatic trials. It can be found in the quiet devotion of caregiving, the mindful practice of a craft, or the daily commitment to principles such as honesty or kindness. A civil engineer designing flood defenses might feel purpose in protecting communities. An amateur gardener nurturing pollinators may find significance in restoring ecological balance. Each action, when undertaken with conscious intent, becomes a piece in the mosaic of a purpose-driven life. To integrate Frankl's teachings, begin by identifying 3 values or causes that resonate deeply, whether fostering justice, inspiring creativity, or cultivating connection. Then ask how each day's tasks align with these values. When a misalignment arises, say a prolonged task that feels devoid of significance, pause and reconnect to your chosen purpose, perhaps by envisioning the broader impact of your work or reframing the task as a step toward a meaningful end. Over time, this practice reinforces the habit of viewing every challenge through the lens of purpose, imbuing even mundane duties with coherence and motivation. Frankl's message endures because it honors the irreducible freedom of the human will. No external power, no tyrant, no circumstance can strip us of the capacity to choose our attitude, to find a why that sustains us through how. In cultivating a purpose-driven life, we tap into a reservoir of meaning that outlives transient pleasures and anchors us in a legacy of significance. Through creation, experience, and attitudinal choice, we forge an inner compass that guides us steadfastly across every terrain, no matter how storm-tossed it may seem. At the intersection of intense focus and effortless movement lies the state of flow, a mental condition in which one's full attention converges on a task so completely that self-consciousness fades, and performance seems to occur by its own momentum. Coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi in the late 20th century, flow describes those moments when time dilates, challenges and skills balance, and creativity spills forth unimpeded. Whether in the midst of a spirited jazz improvisation, a complex coding session, or the solitary rhythm of long-distance running, flow offers a window into human potential, revealing how deep immersion can spark both peak performance and profound fulfillment. Flow arises when certain conditions align. Clear goals provide direction. Immediate feedback sustains engagement. The perceived challenge matches one's skill so that the task feels neither trivial nor overwhelming. In this sweet spot, the mind's usual chatter, worries about the past, anxieties about the future, quietly recedes, making room for singular presence. Csikszentmihalyi observed that artists painting with fervor, surgeons performing delicate operations, and athletes in the zone all report a similar loss of self-doubt, replaced by an unshakable sense of purpose and effortless control. This phenomenon is more than anecdotal. It is a reproducible state that can be deliberately cultivated through practice and environmental design. To understand flow, imagine a tightrope walker balancing high above a chasm. Each micro-adjustment of weight, each measured breath, demands total concentration. There is no space for second-guessing or hesitation. Yet for the walker in the moment, the act of balancing does not feel like a struggle. It feels like extension of their body's innate wisdom. The risk of falling heightens clarity, while the skill honed through countless rehearsals underpins effortless grace. Here, danger and mastery entwine to produce flow, an alchemy of focus and feedback, challenge and competence. Flow's benefits extend well beyond temporary exhilaration. Studies indicate that individuals who regularly access flow experience higher levels of intrinsic motivation, greater creativity, and deeper learning. In education, students immersed in flow during project-based learning absorb concepts more durably. In business, teams that structure work around flow conditions report enhanced collaboration and innovation. Even mundane chores, when approached with mindful attention and calibrated difficulty, such as folding laundry into precisely sized stacks or organizing a desk with intentional order, can yield a modest flow experience, transforming tedium into satisfying engagement. Cultivating flow begins with clarifying your goals. Whether drafting a proposal or composing a piece of music, define what you wish to accomplish in precise terms. Finish a section's outline, master a specific chord progression, solve a particular algorithm. This clarity anchors your attention and sets the stage for immediate feedback. Each completed paragraph, each resolved chord, each debugged line of code signals progress and sustains motivation. Without clear goals, the mind drifts. Without feedback, effort feels aimless. Together, they form the underpinnings of flow. Next, assess the level of challenge relative to your skill. If a task feels too easy, boredom sets in. If it feels too difficult, anxiety ensues. To find the flow channel, nudge the difficulty upward just enough to stretch your abilities without overwhelming them. A writer might introduce a time limit to increase pacing. A musician might attempt a slightly more complex arrangement. A programmer might tackle a new library rather than rely on familiar functions. By adjusting the challenge-skill ratio, you invite a state of engaged focus that hovers on the edge of mastery, where attention sharpens and effort feels both meaningful and invigorating. Environment plays a decisive role as well. Flow demands minimal distraction, notifications silenced, workspace organized, relevant tools at arm's length. Consider how a painter arranges brushes, palette, and canvas within easy reach, minimizing disruptions so that creativity flows uninterrupted. A software developer might use a single full-screen editor window, disabling extraneous tabs and apps to maintain a singular focus on code. These design choices are not mere productivity hacks, but invitations to immerse fully, reducing friction between intention and action. Rituals can further signal the brain's shift into flow. A brief pre-work routine, such as lighting a candle, putting on headphones, or practicing a 2-minute breathing exercise, serves as a mental gateway, marking the transition from scattered thought to concentrated engagement. Over time, this ritual conditions the mind to enter flow more readily, as the cues become associated with the deep focus state. Athletes warm up with stretching and visualization. Writers open their notebooks and review a favorite quotation. Designers sketch a thumbnail layout. These rituals create a psychological threshold that, once crossed, primes the mind for sustained immersion. Maintaining flow also requires managing energy and attention span. The mind cannot sustain hyperfocus indefinitely. Brief breaks allow cognitive resources to replenish. The Pomodoro technique, working for 25 minutes followed by a 5-minute pause, can facilitate cycles of flow interleaved with rest. During breaks, engage in activities that give your prefrontal cortex a respite. Short walks, simple stretches, or gazing out a window at natural scenery. These moments of quiet replenishment not only prevent mental fatigue, but often yield subconscious insights that surface when you return to the task. Flow's transformational power emerges most vividly when it coincides with intrinsically meaningful work. A scientist engrossed in a research puzzle, confident that the outcome carries value for human health, experiences flow not merely as a mental state, but as a fusion of purpose and pleasure. The work unfolds as play, and progress feels both rewarding and consequential. This fusion, where task enjoyment aligns with deeper significance, amplifies flow's impact, making long hours of focused effort sustainable and joy-infused. Historical examples illustrate flow's role in landmark achievements. Albert Einstein spoke of days spent lost in thought experiments, oblivious to his surroundings as he manipulated concepts of time and space. Georgia O'Keeffe described painting in her New Mexico studio for hours with nothing but the canvas and her innermost vision. Professional composers like Ludwig van Beethoven reported that melodies sometimes came to them fully formed, as if channeling rather than crafting. In each case, flow acted as the crucible for creative breakthroughs, merging intense concentration with receptive openness. In interpersonal contexts, group flow can unite teams around a shared objective. Jazz ensembles improvise collectively, listening and responding in real time to each other's motifs. Surgical teams coordinate seamlessly in the operating theater. Sports squads communicate through unspoken cues to execute complex plays. Group flow elevates individual talents into a coherent whole, magnifying both performance quality and social cohesion. Leaders who cultivate psychological safety, where members feel free to contribute without fear of judgment, lay the groundwork for group flow, enabling teams to synchronize their focus and creativity. Ultimately, flow invites us into a paradox. We achieve more by caring less about outcomes in the moment. When attention rests fully on the process, on the tactile sensation of pen against paper, the cord ringing in the ear, the code compiling successfully, the future consequences fade from awareness. Paradoxically, this loss of outcome fixation often leads to the best results, as the mind untethers itself from anxiety and aligns wholly with the task's intrinsic logic. Entering the flow state is not a rare gift bestowed on a select few, but a skill that can be cultivated through intentional practice, environmental shaping, and deep engagement with meaningful challenges. By clarifying goals, calibrating difficulty, designing distraction-free rituals, and honoring the mind's need for intermittent rest, we create the conditions for focus to flower into flow. In that state, work transcends effort, creativity dissolves barriers, and both performance and well-being flourish. The path to mastery, then, is not a climb of relentless striving, but a dance of presence, feedback, and joyful immersion, an ever-unfolding journey into the heart of human potential. Servant leadership. At its heart, servant leadership reverses the traditional hierarchy of power, placing the leader's primary purpose not in commanding or controlling, but in serving the needs of others, so that they, in turn, can grow, innovate, and flourish. While many leadership models emphasize authority, vision casting, or transactional exchange, servant leadership begins with empathy, active listening, and a commitment to stewarding the well-being and development of team members. This approach traces back to early moral thinkers such as Lao Tzu and Jesus of Nazareth, but was articulated in modern organizational theory by Robert K. Greenleaf in the 1970s. Greenleaf argued that the best test of leadership is whether those served become healthier, wiser, freer, and more autonomous as a result of the leader's care. Fundamentally, servant leadership rests on a profound philosophical conviction that true authority emerges not from exerting force, but from fostering the conditions in which others can exercise their own. The servant leader views power as a resource to be used for empowerment rather than domination. In practice, this translates into a daily orientation of attention toward listening more than speaking, asking questions more than issuing directives, and seeking first to understand the hopes, fears, and aspirations of those they lead. Such leaders reject the notion of command and control, recognizing instead that human dignity and intrinsic motivation flourish when individuals feel genuinely heard, respected, and entrusted with responsibility. Imagine a gardener tending a shared community plot. Rather than planting every row according to a personal design, the gardener first surveys the soil, listens to neighbors' preferences, and notes where sun and shade fall most favorably. They then cultivate the soil, water tender seedlings, and clear weeds. Actions that create a fertile environment in which each plant can grow according to its nature. The gardener's role is not to force each plant into a predetermined shape, but to steward the conditions that allow individual strengths to emerge. Similarly, a servant leader prepares soil in an organization, removing obstacles, providing resources, and nurturing relationships so that creativity and accountability can root deeply. The principles of servant leadership manifest in 5 core practices: listening, empathy, healing, awareness, and stewardship. Listening means truly focusing on others' voices, suspending one's own agenda to absorb their insights and concerns. Empathy involves recognizing and validating others' emotions, forging a bond of trust that enables candid dialogue. Healing addresses the emotional and relational wounds that inhibit performance and morale, fostering environments where mistakes become opportunities for restoration rather than blame. Awareness, both of one's own biases and of organizational dynamics, ensures decisions serve the collective good rather than narrow interests. Stewardship commits the leader to leaving the organization stronger than they found it, prioritizing long-term health over short-term gains. In historical and contemporary contexts, servant leaders have reshaped institutions and communities. Mahatma Gandhi's approach to India's independence fused personal humility with unwavering resolve, empowering millions of volunteers through nonviolent example rather than edicts. More recently, Cheryl Batchelder turned around Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen by embedding servant principles into corporate culture. Seeking first to understand franchisees' challenges, investing in their training, and adjusting policies to support their success. Under her stewardship, The brand experienced record growth and elevated franchisee satisfaction, demonstrating that serving stakeholders can yield remarkable business performance. Servant leadership demands a willingness to embrace vulnerability. Unlike command-driven leaders who project invulnerability, servant leaders admit mistakes, seek feedback, and model continuous learning. This vulnerability invites reciprocity. When leaders share their own struggles, team members feel safer to voice concerns, propose novel ideas, and take calculated risks. The resulting psychological safety accelerates innovation, as groups feel permission to experiment without fear of punishment. Organizations such as Google and Pixar attribute much of their creative excellence to cultures of trust and mutual care, hallmarks of servant leadership in action. Practically, cultivating servant leadership begins with small, intentional shifts. In one-on-one conversations, practice asking open-ended questions: "What's most challenging for you right now?" Or "How can I support your goals?" And then listen without interrupting or formulating responses mid-sentence. In team meetings, invite silent reflection before dialogue, giving space for quieter voices to emerge. Allocate a portion of meeting agendas to discuss personal development or well-being, rather than solely operational metrics. When allocating resources, consider not only what drives financial results, but what fosters people's growth and resilience. These micro-practices signal that serving others is a strategic priority, rather than a mere platitude. Over time, servant leadership creates a virtuous cycle. As individuals feel nurtured and empowered, they in turn invest their talents and creativity wholly in shared goals, driving collective success. The organization evolves into a community of co-leaders, each practicing stewardship in their own sphere. In this environment, turnover declines, discretionary effort rises, and innovation thrives, not because of stringent controls, but because people feel valued and entrusted with true responsibility. Servant leadership thus reframes success from a function of authority to a measure of collective flourishing. It asks leaders to adopt the stance of gardener, healer, and steward, roles that require humility, patience, and unwavering commitment to others' growth. By serving first, leaders unleash the potential of many, building resilient, innovative communities that sustain success long after any individual tenure. In embracing this philosophy, we learn that the most enduring legacy of leadership is not the power one wields, but the seeds of capability and care one plants in others. Minimalism and focus. In a world overflowing with information, options, and obligations, minimalism offers a counterintuitive path to greater achievement. By removing the non-essential, we amplify the impact of what remains. At its philosophical core, minimalism asks us to distinguish between abundance and excess, to honor simplicity as a guiding principle, rather than a bland aesthetic or ritual of austerity. When we clear away superfluous tasks, possessions, and mental noise, we cultivate a form of clarity that focuses our attention like a lens, channeling energy into the few things that truly matter. This clarity, in turn, becomes the soil in which deep work, creative insight, and sustained momentum take root. The roots of minimalism trace back to Stoic restraint and Zen Buddhist detachment. Stoic philosophers counseled that true freedom arises not from amassing wealth or status, but from freeing oneself of attachment to externals. Seneca urged his students to practice voluntary discomfort, wear coarser clothing, skip a meal, sleep on the ground, to learn that contentment depends less on conditions than on the mind's own disposition. Likewise, Zen masters taught that enlightenment emerges not in gathering insights, but in stripping away conceptual clutter. The famed Zen monk Ryokan lived in a tiny thatched hut, owning only what he could carry. His poems celebrate the profound joy found in an empty bowl, or a single ink brush stroke on paper. Minimalism, then, is not denial, but liberation. A deliberate paring down to awaken presence and purpose. In practice, minimalism unfolds across two interlinked dimensions: the external environment and the internal mind. Externally, we assess our physical and digital spaces for friction points, cluttered desks that hide essential tools, overflowing email inboxes that drown priority messages, endless subscription services that fragment our attention. Internally, we examine our to-do lists, mental commitments, and habitual distractions. The minimalism principle urges us to ask, which of these elements serves my highest goals? which distracts, delays, or dilutes my focus, and which can be removed or delegated to create breathing room for what remains. Imagine a writer's studio. In one version, the desk is piled with half-read books, coffee cups, sticky notes, and knickknacks, each item a micro-distraction. The gaze flickers across the clutter, fracturing attention before a single sentence is written. In the minimalist variant, the desk holds only a notebook, a pen, and perhaps a single reference text. The computer screen displays only the writing application, notifications silenced. Here, the environment itself cues the mind's deep focus mode. The absence of extraneous stimuli becomes a form of invitation. Everything in view aligns with the sole intention of writing. Digital minimalism extends this logic to our online lives. Notifications pop up like insistent intruders. Calendars overflow with meetings that blur distinction between urgent and important, and social media streams fragment our attention into shallow skims. Digital minimalism, as advocated by thinkers like Cal Newport, recommends ruthless pruning. Delete apps that do not serve core goals. Batch email and chat into designated time blocks. Adopt single-purpose tools that do one thing well, without luring us into rabbit holes. By redesigning our digital architecture, we regain control over our time and cognitive bandwidth, channeling it toward deeper work, creative projects, and meaningful relationships. The power of minimalism shows up dramatically when combined with the concept of essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less but better. Where minimalism removes clutter, essentialism chooses the few projects or priorities that deliver maximal impact. Instead of saying yes to every intriguing opportunity, the essentialist asks, which of these commitments aligns most closely with my core purpose? And let's go of the rest. The outcome is not an empty schedule, but a sharply focused agenda, where each task serves an overarching vision of success. Historical examples of minimalism's potency abound. Steve Jobs famously stripped Apple's product line from dozens of models to just 4, allowing the company to focus resources on refining iconic devices like the iPhone and iMac. Marie Kondo's decluttering methodology, keeping only items that spark joy, might appear whimsical, yet it harnesses the same minimalism ethos. By letting go of the superfluous, we discover what truly resonates. In scientific research, breakthroughs often arise not from scattering effort across dozens of experiments, but from narrowing focus to a single high-leverage question. Newton's contemplation of an apple falling under gravity. Watson and Crick's obsessive modeling of DNA's double helix. On an individual level, minimalism yields psychological benefits beyond productivity. When we own fewer possessions, we experience less anxiety about maintaining them. When we commit to fewer projects, we feel less guilt over unfinished tasks. The mind, liberated from juggling countless obligations, finds restful space, in which creativity and insight can emerge organically. In his memoir, minimalist Greg McKeown describes waking each morning to a blank calendar, no meetings until late afternoon, allowing him to write, think, exercise, and reflect. This spaciousness became the crucible of his best work, proving that less can indeed be more. Implementing minimalism begins with a clear-eyed audit. Choose one domain, your desk, your wardrobe, your project list, and identify 3 categories: must keep, might keep, and unnecessary. For each might keep item, ask whether it actively contributes to your core objectives or merely fills an emotional or habitual space. If the latter, place it in the unnecessary pile. Once cleared, observe the shift in your mental state. Does focus sharpen? Do creative thoughts flow more freely? Do you feel a sense of lightness and clarity? These observations reinforce the benefits of minimalism and motivate deeper application. Beyond physical decluttering, minimalism requires courage to let go of social and mental commitments. We may need to say no to recurring meetings, unsubscribe from newsletters that no longer serve us, or relinquish outdated goals that no longer align with our evolving vision. This process can feel uncomfortable, like cutting off a limb, but each removal creates a new aperture of possibility. As one scholar of minimalism put it, when you clear away the weeds, you make room for the flowers that were always meant to grow. Minimalism also thrives in ritual. Morning and evening routines can be distilled to a handful of high-impact practices, meditation, journaling, planning, that set the tone for focused action. By resisting the urge to layer on extra productivity hacks, we honor simplicity and consistency. allowing these core rituals to anchor our days. A minimalist routine might involve 5 minutes of mindful breathing, a quick scan of the day's top 3 priorities, and a deliberate transition away from screens before bedtime. Each element earns its place by contributing directly to mental clarity and well-being. In the broader arc of a success journey, minimalism acts as a compass, guiding decisions about where to invest finite resources of time, attention, and energy. It asks the hard question at every crossroads. Does this choice align with my most meaningful goals? If not, release it with gratitude and turn toward what does. In doing so, we transform minimalism from a sparse aesthetic into a dynamic strategy for deep focus, creative exploration, and sustained achievement. By embracing minimalism and focus, we carve out the cognitive and emotional capacity to engage deeply with our highest priority work. We learn that abundance need not come from accumulation but from clarity, a focused alignment between our environment, our commitments, and our deepest aspirations. In the embrace of less, we uncover the power of more insight, more creativity, and more deliberate progress toward the success we truly value. Self-compassion as a success strategy. Success is not only built on discipline, hard work, and perseverance, but equally on the gentle kindness we extend toward ourselves when we falter. At its heart, self-compassion reframes failure and imperfection as universal aspects of the human experience, rather than as indictments of personal worth. Developed by psychologist Kristin Neff, self-compassion rests on 3 pillars: self-kindness, treating oneself with warmth rather than harsh judgment; common humanity, recognizing that suffering connects us rather than isolates us; and mindfulness, maintaining balanced awareness of emotions without over-identifying. Together, these elements create an inner environment in which setbacks become fertile ground for growth, rather than breeding grounds for shame. Imagine a child learning to walk. Each tumble greeted not with scorn, but with a parent's soft encouragement. Well done for trying. Let's try again. That same tender refrain offered to ourselves in adulthood unlocks resilience far more powerfully than self-criticism. Neuroscience research shows that self-critical thoughts activate brain regions linked to threat response, heightening cortisol levels and narrowing cognitive flexibility. In contrast, self-compassionate reflections engage areas associated with caregiving and affiliation, releasing oxytocin and promoting a sense of safety that supports creative problem-solving. When we buffer ourselves against toxic self-judgment, our minds remain open to alternative strategies, fresh perspectives, and renewed effort. Historical voices anticipated this insight long before modern science. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus counseled students to speak to themselves as they would to a dear friend, admonishing that if you would not say it to another, do not say it to yourself. Similarly, Buddhist teachings of metta, or loving kindness, extend compassion inward as naturally as outward. By silently repeating phrases like, "May I be safe, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering," practitioners cultivate an attitude of benevolence toward their own inner struggles. In both traditions, self-compassion is not indulgence, but an ethical and psychological foundation for clear-sighted action and authentic presence. Consider the familiar scenario of receiving critical feedback: an underwhelming performance review, a disappointing manuscript rejection, or a botched presentation. The instinctive inner critic may lash out, "I'm incompetent. I'll never amount to anything. Everyone is judging me." Under this barrage, motivation withers and anxiety mounts. But if instead you acknowledge the sting, "This hurts," recognize that all driven people face critique, everyone who strives encounters setbacks, and offer yourself kindness. "It's okay to feel disappointed. I can learn from this." You transform the moment. That shift from harsh self-analysis to compassionate reflection creates the mental bandwidth to identify concrete lessons, whether seeking clarification, honing skills, or exploring alternative approaches, rather than drowning in paralyzing shame. Real-world examples underscore self-compassion's catalytic role. Author Elizabeth Gilbert, after her debut success, faced a protracted period of creative block. So debilitating, she questioned her right to write. Rather than berating herself into more frantic effort, she turned inward with compassion, acknowledging her fear and exhaustion. This self-kindness, Gilbert notes, renewed her creative impulse, allowing her to write again with authenticity rather than desperation. Similarly, athlete Michael Phelps, after narrowly missing a gold medal, credited his coach's insistence on treating the setback with supportive reflection rather than punitive training as pivotal to his comeback victories. In both cases, self-compassion did not weaken resolve, it recharged it by mitigating the corrosive effects of self-doubt. Cultivating self-compassion begins with mindful awareness of inner dialogue. Throughout the day, notice moments when you slip into self-criticism. I messed up that meeting. I'm a fraud at this job. Pause and ask, if a friend spoke to me this way, how would I respond? Then offer yourself those same compassionate words. I made a mistake, but I can learn. I'm doing my best under difficult circumstances. Over time, these micro-interventions weaken habitual patterns of harsh judgment and strengthen neural circuits of self-kindness. Practical exercises deepen this practice. One of Neff's core techniques is the self-compassion break. When distress arises, place a hand over your heart or on your cheek, a tactile cue of care. Silently name the emotion. This is frustration. This is sadness. And acknowledge shared humanity. Everyone feels frustrated sometimes. Then offer a phrase of kindness. May I give myself the compassion I need. This three-step process, mindful recognition, common humanity reminder, and soothing self-address, can be completed in under a minute. Yet, its physiological and psychological effects ripple through your day, reducing anxiety and restoring focus. Another method is journaling through the lens of compassion. Instead of cataloging failures as proof of unworthiness, write about them as natural challenges in the broader human narrative. Describe what happened, acknowledge your emotional response, and then write a compassionate perspective. I faced a tough audience today. That's hard. I'm not alone in this experience. Many speakers face rough crowds. I'll treat myself kindly and review what worked as well as what needs refinement. This narrative reframing shifts mindset from punitive self-flagellation to balanced problem-solving. Cultivating self-compassion also entails setting boundaries around unrealistic expectations. Perfectionism often masquerades as high standards, but beneath it lies fear of judgment and failure. By practicing self-compassion, we learn to distinguish aspiration from self-punishment. We strive for excellence while permitting ourselves to be human. When setbacks occur, we maintain forward momentum without detouring into shame spirals. Over time, this balanced approach fosters sustainable growth because motivation fueled by kindness outlasts the fleeting push of guilt. Beyond the individual, self-compassion shapes how leaders cultivate high-performance cultures. When managers model compassion, acknowledging collective mistakes, supporting team members through challenges, and encouraging balanced self-reflection, they create psychological safety. In such environments, employees take intelligent risks, share candid feedback, and pursue innovation without fear of permanent reprisal. Research links compassionate organizational cultures to higher engagement, lower burnout, and greater retention, demonstrating that self-compassion scales from personal resilience to collective success. In embracing self-compassion as a success strategy, we learn that our inner ally need not be a stern taskmaster, but can be a kind mentor. By recognizing the universality of struggle, extending ourselves the same warmth we'd offer others, and mindfully observing painful emotions without over-identifying, we transform setbacks into opportunities for insight, rather than sources of shame. In this gentle framework, sustained motivation and genuine growth arise not from merciless pressure, but from an enduring climate of inner care, fueling both well-being and achievement with equal grace. 19. Radical candor and constructive feedback. In the landscape of success, honest communication acts as both compass and catalyst, guiding individuals and teams toward continuous improvement. Yet candor without care can wound, and care without candor can stagnate. Kim Scott's concept of radical candor bridges this divide by insisting that feedback must combine genuine personal concern with a direct challenge to performance. When leaders and peers speak with both empathy and clarity, they free hidden potential, foster trust, and accelerate learning. Creating an environment where mistakes surface early, insights flow freely, and relationships deepen through shared growth. At its philosophical core, Radical candor rests on two axiomatic commitments: care personally and challenge directly. To care personally is to recognize the humanity behind each colleague, to value them beyond mere output, and to approach every conversation with empathy. To challenge directly is to confront shortcomings or missed opportunities candidly, offering clear guidance on how to improve. These twin pillars guard against the twin dangers of ruinous empathy, where kindness softens critical feedback into ineffectiveness, and obnoxious aggression, where blunt criticism inflicts damage absent of supportive intent. Imagine a sculptor working alongside an apprentice. If the master gently strokes away excess marble, yet hesitates to point out a flawed angle, the apprentice's technique stalls. Conversely, if the sculptor slashes criticism without demonstrating care, the apprentice may withdraw in shame. Radical candor fuses the two. The master places a hand on the apprentice's shoulder, acknowledges their dedication, and then pauses the carving to say, "This curve drifts too sharply. Let me show you how a subtle adjustment here brings it back into harmony." In that moment, guidance lands as an act of partnership rather than judgment, and the apprentice's confidence and skill both flourish. Historical examples of radical candor echo through diverse fields. Benjamin Franklin, in his autobiography, describes how he and a small peer group exchanged anonymous critiques of each other's essays. Prefaces of friendship, underscoring each pointed suggestion. The result was writing owned sharper than any solitary practice could achieve. In medical training, the tradition of bedside teaching mandates immediate, precise feedback, often blunt, balanced by the shared mission of patient care, ensuring that residents learn swiftly while feeling supported by mentors who invest in their success. Radical candor thrives in cultures of psychological safety, where individuals trust that speaking up, even with criticism, will not result in retribution. Google's Project Aristotle identified these cultures as the key driver of effective teams, where members care for one another personally, they feel confident to offer unvarnished insights, and those insights translate into better decision-making and innovation. Conversely, teams mired in politeness or fear avoid necessary critiques, allowing problems to fester until they escalate into crisis. Practically, offering radical candor begins with framing feedback as an act of support, rather than a verdict. Rather than prefacing criticism with vague softeners, "No offense, but," the speaker first affirms shared goals. "I know how much you care about this project and I want to help us succeed." Then they name the specific behavior. "I noticed the report omitted key data on customer retention," and suggest a clear path forward. "Let's include that metric in the next draft and highlight its trend over the past 6 months." This structure, care, observation, suggestion, ensures that the recipient hears criticism not as an attack on character, but as a supportive nudge toward excellence. Equally important is soliciting feedback with humility. Radical candor invites a two-way street. Leaders ask, "Where did I fall short in supporting you this week?" Or, "What could I do differently to help your progress?" By modeling receptivity, they demonstrate that feedback is not a one-off event, but a continuous dialogue. This practice dissolves hierarchical barriers, signaling that candor applies upward as well as downward, and reinforcing a culture where everyone feels empowered to speak truth to power. Moreover, the timeliness of feedback amplifies its impact. Waiting weeks or months to point out an issue dilutes relevance and hinders corrective action. In contrast, immediate observations delivered with care allow for rapid improvement, and reinforce the norm that honesty rather than avoidance is the default. Regular check-ins, debriefs after key meetings, and brief feedback huddles ensure that insights remain fresh, specific, and actionable. When teams master radical candor, they transform setbacks into springboards. A misaligned strategy becomes an opportunity to recalibrate. A miscommunication reveals hidden assumptions, and a project delay sparks creative problem-solving. Feedback ceases to be dreaded, but becomes a valued tool for mutual growth. Individuals learn not only to refine their performance, but also to strengthen relationships through shared vulnerability and unwavering support. Radical candor thus emerges as a potent success philosophy, the fusion of direct challenge and heartfelt care that unlocks collective potential. In its practice, we learn that our toughest conversations can be our most connective ones, that speaking truth with kindness paves the way for innovation, resilience, and enduring trust. By embracing this approach, we build cultures where excellence and empathy advance hand in hand, sculpting performance and character in equal measure. True success extends beyond the accolades we accumulate or the milestones we cross. It resides in the lasting impact we leave behind, the legacy that outlives our own lives, and the contributions that ripple through future generations. At its philosophical core, legacy invites us to ask not merely what can I achieve, but how will my actions serve those who come after? This shift reframes success from a private ledger of personal gains into a communal narrative of shared growth, where each achievement becomes a stepping stone for others, and each effort a gift to the broader tapestry of human endeavor. Across history, individuals who thought long beyond their own lifespans have shaped fields, communities, and cultures. Consider the ancient Athenian agora, where Socrates engaged citizens in relentless questioning, planting seeds of philosophical inquiry that blossomed into Western thought. Though he wrote nothing himself, his method of dialectic, Socratic dialogue, became a living inheritance, carried forward by Plato and Aristotle, then by countless teachers who recognized that asking the right question can catalyze intellectual revolutions. Socrates' legacy lies not in material monuments, but in a spark of curiosity that continues to ignite minds millennia later. In more recent centuries, philanthropic visionaries such as Andrew Carnegie understood that wealth could serve as a force for generational uplift. His conviction that the rich bear a moral responsibility to distribute their fortunes in ways that empower others led to the creation of public libraries across the English-speaking world. Institutions that democratized knowledge, fueled literacy, and nurtured the ambitions of millions. Carnegie's legacy remains palpable in the quiet reading rooms, the whispered conferrals of scholarship, and the ripple effect of educated minds contributing back to society. His life illustrates how aligning personal success with collective enrichment transforms private achievements into enduring public goods. Legacy also emerges through mentorship and the transmission of values. Imagine a master craftsman teaching an apprentice the delicate art of lapidary or lace making. With every demonstration, every correction, the younger artisan acquires technical skill and absorbs a worldview, a reverence for patience, precision, and beauty. When that apprentice, in turn, becomes a master, the chain continues. Values and skills flow outward, adapting to new contexts, but remaining rooted in the original purpose. In this way, each generation stands on the shoulders of those before, carrying forward not just knowledge, but the ethos that shapes its application. Legacy need not be grand or institutional. Small acts of contribution, raising empathic children, modeling integrity in daily work, telling stories of resilience to friends, seed future capacities in subtle but profound ways. A teacher who nurtures a student's confidence may inspire a future leader. A colleague's unsolicited words of encouragement can embolden someone to pursue their first solo project. A neighbor's habit of sharing homegrown vegetables can forge community bonds that last lifetimes. Each gesture adds a thread to the fabric of society, weaving connections that extend far beyond our immediate sight. Yet the awareness of legacy also carries responsibility. It challenges us to weigh the downstream effects of our choices, to consider not only short-term gains, but the values and structures we bequeath. In business, leaders who prioritize sustainable practices over immediate profit help safeguard ecosystems and livelihoods for generations to come. In technology, innovators who build ethical safeguards into emerging platforms shape how future societies will experience connection, knowledge, and privacy. The awareness of legacy thus cultivates a long-term perspective, urging us to act with foresight and stewardship rather than fleeting expedience. To cultivate a legacy mindset, begin by articulating the principles you wish to pass on. Are honesty, curiosity, and compassion at the core of your values? Do you hope to spark creativity, champion justice, or foster resilience in others? Once these guiding principles are clear, seek daily opportunities to embody them through mentorship, through the quality of your work, through community engagement. Document your values in letters or journals that can be shared. Tell stories that illustrate how those values transformed your own journey. Such practices anchor your intentions and provide tangible resources for others to draw upon after you are gone. Reflection on mortality often sharpens our sense of legacy. While contemplating one's finite time can evoke discomfort, it can also crystallize purpose, revealing which projects demand our fullest energy and which distractions merit release. As writer and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl observed, awareness of death can concentrate our focus on what truly matters, cutting through trivial preoccupations and drawing us into alignment with enduring values. By occasionally pausing to envision the end of our own narratives, we can recalibrate our daily choices toward a legacy that honors the lives of those who will follow. Ultimately, legacy and contribution invite us into a form of participation that transcends our individual lifespan. They remind us that while we travel our own arcs of success, our actions resonate in the broader human story. Every decision, every act of generosity, every commitment to excellence plants a seed that may blossom long after we have departed. In nurturing that perspective, we align our pursuits with the highest aim of success, not merely personal triumph, but the flourishing of community, culture, and the human spirit. By living with an eye toward legacy, we ensure that our most meaningful achievements continue to light the way for generations yet unborn. And so we arrive at the close of this journey through 20 time-honored philosophies of success, each a river of wisdom that feeds the boundless sea of your own potential. May the Stoic distinction between what you can shape and what you must release steady your purpose. May the growth mindset and Kaizen's gentle increments remind you that mastery unfolds one deliberate step at a time. May Ikigai's petals guide you to the work that stirs your heart and serves your world. May Wu Wei's effortless flow and Frankl's imperative for meaning sustain you through trials. May visualization, attraction, and atomic habits prime your mind and body for inspired action. And may abundance, resilience, compassion, candor, and legacy shape not only your achievements, but the lasting impact you leave behind. Carry these teachings not as distant ideals, but as companions on your path. Each to be revisited when doubts cloud your vision, each to be woven into your daily rhythms with patience and care. In their company, may you find the clarity to define your aims, the courage to embrace uncertainty, and the compassion to nurture both yourself and those you lead. The journey of success is neither a sprint nor a solitary climb, but a lifelong conversation between intention and circumstance, between inner resolve and outer opportunity. And now, as you step into whatever ventures await you tomorrow, remember this: true success is measured not merely by summits scaled, but by the quiet growth of character, the depth of connection you foster, and the legacy of kindness and purpose you leave in your wake. Go forth with steady heart and open mind, for the world awaits the unique gifts only you